Welcome to the Ad Hoc Reporting for Beginners training video. This video, a part of the 2020 Badger Trax User Conference, will provide a demonstration and highlight the different features included in Trax ad hoc queries. This video is designed for the brand new user of Trax or an experienced user of Trax who is new to using ad hoc queries in the Trax software. During this video, I'll be using a Trax Office training version with a Trax baseline of 19.01.09 and a WPAC number of 20.05.15. This is the Trax training version released on the Badger Trax website in May of 2020. If you'd like to follow along and receive the same results I get in this video, please pause the video now and navigate to www.wibadgertrax.gov and click the Resources tab. After entering your Wisconsin user ID, you will be taken to a page where you can download the current Trax training version. Please note, however, that a Trax training version is not required to follow along during this video, so if you don't have one, don't worry. Everything we do today can be done on any Trax Office version, production or training, and we'll talk more about that later in the video. What we will want to have, though, is the 2020 Badger Trax User Conference Ad Hoc Reporting for Beginners handout, located again on our website, www.wibadgertrax.gov. This is a PDF document that covers everything I'll cover today with step-by-step instructions, a more in-depth review of several topics, and lots of screenshots of different windows and areas within Trax to make sure you're on the right track. I'm also going to reference this document several times throughout this video, so it'd be best to have access to that right off the bat. Right, so go ahead and pause the video now and download that if you haven't already, so you can get a better understanding of the topics I'll cover during this video. All right, so what are ad hoc queries? Ad hoc queries are user-generated queries to the Trax databases in order to generate an ad hoc report, which can be printed off, exported to Excel, or saved as a PDF or image file and attached to an email. Ad hoc queries use the Trax data such as citations, crash reports, and other Trax entry forms to answer questions such as how many traffic citations were issued to defendants under 18 years of age during the month of January, or how many traffic accidents have occurred in a certain intersection during a specified time frame. Once you get used to creating ad hoc queries, you'll see what a powerful tool they are, and you'll be able to answer virtually any question you or other users at your agency may have regarding your Trax data. To create ad hoc queries, you must be logged into Trax as a user with either the supervisor or access level, or a user with a system administrator access level. If you're using a Trax training version, go ahead and log in as user 222 to make sure you have access to the ad hoc queries, as this user has the supervisor access level associated with it. Right, so let's jump to Trax. I'm starting on page 3 of the 2020 Badger Trax User Conference Ad Hoc Reporting for Beginners handout, step 1. Step 1 has us log into Trax training as user 222 with the password of Trax. Like I said before, a training version of Trax is not required to follow along in this video or to use this handout as a guide. The only difference between using the training version versus a production version will be the number of records we receive in our query. If you're using a production version of Trax or an older training version, the number of results you get back from the query might be different since we are looking at different databases. If you're using a different version of Trax, just make sure you're using an Office version of Trax and that you're logging in again as a user with either the supervisor access level or the system administrator access level, so you have access to the ad hoc queries. So let's go ahead and log in. I'll type in 222 for the username and all lowercase TRACS for the password and hit enter. If you're using a training version of Trax, as you saw, you'll get a pop-up telling us that we are in fact using a Trax training version and that no data will be sent to this data upon transmission. Just hit OK here to continue to log in. If you're using a training version of Trax, make sure you follow step 2 in the handout and hit the End Shift button under the Data Transfer tab. This will populate your database with training data included in our Trax training version. I've already done that here so that all my training data has already been imported into my training database. Also, make sure you're using the May 2020 training version so that you receive at least 55 forms after your end shift. If you're using another version of Trax, you might receive more or less forms, but if you're using the Trax training with WPAC 20.05.15 installed, you should get exactly 55 forms. If you don't, you probably are logging as wrong user. Please make sure you're logging as 222. So with all that out of the way, we can finally take a look at what we're looking to build today. If you look at step 5 of the handout, you will see a table listing the criteria for the practice query named Issued Trax Citations by Statute Category. Now, if you're not aware, all state statutes within Trax are organized into different statute categories based on the type of offense. To quickly view what statute is included in each category, we can open a warning form, jump down to the violation group, and click statute number, and hit search. Here you can see all the statute categories associated with traffic citations, non-traffic citations, and natural resources citations. If we jump back to traffic, for example, and click the driver license category, we can see that all these different state statutes fall within that category. These are categories we're referring to in the query and will we be building today. So closing out of that and closing the form, we're ready to look at the ad hoc query builder. Following steps 6, 7, and 8 in our handout, we're going to go to the search section just below Forms Manager, click the Advanced tab, hit the bubble next to Ad hoc Queries, and click New. This opens up the Ad hoc Query Builder for us in a new window. So let's go ahead and enter the name of our query in the query name field, which is Issued Traffic Citations by Statute category. In the database field, make sure you choose Data. The data database holds all of the citation records, crash form records, really any TRACS entry form that's ever been generated in TRACS. The support database, just for your knowledge, contains listings such as the court schedules and your agency's local ordinances, while the log and users databases contain TRACS log data and user data respectively. Last, we're going to make sure our data source reads all. This is important for production versions of TRACS, especially when you're creating real queries for your agency, as you want to make sure you're pulling the correct number of records that fit your parameters, whether the records have been archived or not. If we chose current here, we would only be looking at non-archived forms. Choosing all ensures we're looking at both. All right, so let's stop here at step 10 and jump back to page 1. Pages 1 and 2 in the handout explain how the TRACS ad hoc query builder is organized and its organization coincides with the composition of a TRACS entry form. As you can see, the TRACS ad hoc query builder is separated into 5 different sections called Form, Group, Field, Action, and Values. The first section, Form, is a listing of the different sources that we can pull data from. Most of these are the TRACS entry forms, such as the LCI, the LZ, the NTC, and the crash form. The first 2 options, case and form information and common information, however, are sources that contain several types of forms. For example, we want to look at forms that share a common case tag. I would look for that using case and form information. If I want to look up a defendant's last name, for example, I would use common information, since this uses the TRACS master index to search individuals, vehicles, and locations. We'll select LC as our form source to look up traffic citation data. The next section, Group, coincides with the different groups in a TRACS entry form. Take a look at page 2 of our handout, and you will see the LC entry form on the right-hand side of the page. As you can see, the entry form itself is organized into different groups, and these groups correspond to the options found in the Group section of the Ad hoc Query Builder. They're all listed by name on the entry form, with the exception of the document group, which is the topmost group of any TRACS entry form, and has general information like the document number. Click on Document under the Group section in the Ad hoc Query Builder. The Fields section contains options for the actual fields contained within each group. The field name is preceded by the group name in which the field is found. For example, document number is the document number field found in the document number group of the LC form. Let's take a look again at page 1 of our handout, and you will see an annotated version of the document group in an LC with Ad hoc Query Builder names just below it. As you can see, not all fields are named on the entry form itself, like number 8, for example, the document form disposition, which tells us if a form has been issued or voided. Now, this is not typical for other groups. Most other groups on a form, like the violation group and plaintiff group, have the field names on the entry forms themselves, which correspond to their Ad hoc Query Builder names as well. So back to the Ad hoc Query Builder, let's go ahead and select document number for now. Next, we have the Action section. This section contains options for us to organize the data we want to include in our query. The actions available to us will differ depending on the data type of the field selected in the Field section. So for example, since we chose document number, which is just a string of letters and numbers, we get the options you see here. Show results just exports to the data. So if we wanted to include document number in our results, we would select that one. I do always recommend including the document number in your results, just so it's easier to go back and look up these records to verify the data is correct, or to print off records for records requests and that kind of thing. As you can see, we can also constrain the document number using actions such as begins with, ends with. So if we were looking for a range of LC citations that begin with AB 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, we could use those actions here. Below that, we have equals and not equal. If we want to look for or not look for specific document numbers, contains and does not contain for a list of document numbers we're not interested in or are. And finally, is blank or is not blank if we're looking for LCs generated in error. Like I said before, the data type of the field in question will change the options we have for the action section. So if we go back and choose the form information in our group and form date in our field, which is just the date on which the form was generated, we can see that we get an entirely new list of actions to choose from that have to do with dates, such as month range. Last, we have the value section. This section is used to parameterize our selection. So for example, if we chose month range for our form date and hit the new button under the value section, we can see that the search value editor window pops up letting us choose from month and to month we are interested in. So if we chose August to September, this will show us all the LCs generated between August 1st and September 30th. So go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see your value pop into the value section. To add this to your query, you just hit OK, and it'll be added to the query criteria down at the bottom of the window. OK, let's do that again, sorry. Yeah, just clear.
Starting at the same point that you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep saying OK instead of add. I'll make a note of that. OK. Last, we have the value section. This section is used to parameterize our selection. So for example, if we chose month range for our form date and hit the new button under the value section, we can see that the search value editor window pops up, letting us choose a from month and a to month we're interested in. So if we chose August to September, this would show us all the LCs generated between August 1st and September 30th. Go ahead and click OK, and you'll see the value pop into the value section. To add this to your query, you just hit add, and it will be added to the query criteria down at the bottom of the window. Now, we don't actually want this in our query. This was just an example, so go ahead and hit the remove button to the right of the query criteria section and click yes to remove it from our criteria. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start building our practice query. So again, we're referring to table 1 on page 4 of the ad hoc query for beginners handout, and continuing with step 11 of the handout as well. The first criterion in our table asks us for the status field located in the form information group. Now, this is one of those groups that doesn't appear on a Trex entry form itself, but rather is part of the form information that can only be seen through Forms Manager. So don't try looking on LC for this field because you won't find it. We want to make sure, though, that the form has been successfully transmitted to a court to include in our query. So first, we're going to choose LC in the form section, next form information in group, and choose status for the field. For the action, we'll choose exact match and go ahead and hit the new button under values to find our transmitted value. You'll see a window pop up, and you can choose to scroll down a bit until you find transmitted. Check the box next to transmitted and click OK. Click the add button to the right to add this criteria onto this query search section down below. You can see that a message pops up that reads, only include LC forms that match the following criteria, with our transmitted exact match form status just below it. A tree with our different criteria will continue to grow that will funnel down the records that will be included in our query. Next, we want to make sure the LCs included in our query have actually been issued to the defendant. This information is found on the form disposition status field we mentioned earlier. It's important to include this because sometimes LCs are transmitted in voided status to send them straight to the DOT, and we want to make sure that the LC records returned by our query have actually been transmitted after having been issued to the defendant. Continuing along with step 14 in our handout, select LC in the form section, select document in the group section. Our field's going to be form disposition, so choose document form disposition. And again, we're going to choose exact match for our action. Hit the new button under the value section, and again, we'll get a window pop up where we can choose the value we're interested in. Scroll down, select the box next to issued, and click the OK button. Finally, hit add to add this to our query criteria. You'll see our criteria tree is growing with the issued form disposition status appearing just below our transmitted form status criterion. Also notice that these are connected by the AND operator. And this is a good time to mention now that you can see to the right of the value section, we can switch between and or. This uses basic logic where criteria connected with the AND operator have to all be true for the record to be returned. So form must be transmitted and issued for it to be included. Whereas if we chose an or, forms that had been transmitted in voided status would be included, as would forms that have been issued but not yet transmitted, since the record only has to have one of these criteria be true for it to be included in our result set. The ad hoc query builder has the AND operator set by default, and if you want to switch to OR, you're going to have to click the little bubble next to the OR operator next to values before you select the form for the next criterion. The next two criteria are pretty easy since we're just exporting the fields without constraining by any values. So continuing along with steps 16 and 17, we're going to export the statute number by selecting LC for our form, violation for the group, and a violation statute number for the field. Click Show Results for the action, and you'll see the values is grayed out. This is because Show Results action just exports the data field without constraining it by any value. Click Add to add it to your query criteria, and we'll do the same for the statute description. Select LC for form, and violation for group again, and violation statute description for the field. Click Show Results and Add. Our fifth criterion will be the statute category. So here we're following step 18, and we'll select LC again for our form, violation for the group, and a violation statute category for the field. For the action this time, we're going to choose includes any. Includes any allows us to choose more than one option. If we had chosen exact match like we did previously, we'd only be able to select one statute category at a time. So we have to run this query multiple times if we're interested in several categories. Choosing include any lets us choose one or several categories. So go ahead and click New. We're going to parameterize this value. To make this value a parameter, and therefore dynamic, meaning that it can be changed each time the query is run, check the box next to prompt user for search value. Go ahead and enter a prompt that will pop up each time the user runs the query to tell them what to enter for this parameter. Enter something like select statute categories. Now, there's no need to select the value above since the user can choose what they want to search for during runtime, so just click OK. You'll see the value becomes a user-entered value, which means, again, that is selected at runtime by the user themselves. So click Add to add this to our ad hoc query. Our next criterion will be the date of the violation. So continuing along with step 21 of our handout, again, select LC for the form, violation for the group, and violation date occurred for the field. In the action section, click Range, and click New. Again, we want to parameterize this value so that we can make this report reusable in different time frames, such as a weekly report or biannual report, that kind of thing. So in the box next to prompt user for search value, enter a message such as enter violation, date, range. So if you look on top here, you can see that we can choose a default value that will be pre-entered for us when our query runs. This default value can be changed at runtime by the user, and it's not necessary to add one, but it'll save us some time down the line, so let's go ahead and add one here. If you're using the May 2020 Trax training version like me, you're going to want to choose a default date range from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2019, so that we get the same number of results. Click on the down arrow next to the From field to open the calendar. Click on month and year to be taken to the month selector, and click the year header to go up one level, and you'll see a list of different years to choose from. Drill down to January 1st, 2018 by clicking 2018, January, and finally 1. You'll see the date pop into the From field. And for the To field, you can also manually type in the date by clicking on the field and typing in what you're interested in. Here, we'll type in 12/31/2019. And once our default values are entered, go ahead and click the OK button and the Add button. Finally, our last criterion is going to be the document number, shown in step 18, or 28 rather, of our handout. Like I said earlier in the video, it's always good to include the document number in our results, just so that we can easily look up forms that are included in our results to verify a query's correctness and to quickly respond to open records requests that meet the criteria as outlined in our query. So go ahead and choose LC for the form, document for the group, document number for the field, and show results for the action. Click Add. Your query builder should look like this, with all 7 criteria appearing in a connected tree. We're ready to look at our results, but before we do, make sure you do hit the Finish button on the bottom right-hand corner of the window. This saves our query to make sure we don't lose any of the work we just did. Clicking Next would show us our results, but wouldn't save our query, and it may lead to us losing our query if we don't do the next steps correctly. So I recommend always hitting Finish before continuing. You'll see the query with the name we chose pop into the Ad Hoc Queries window. Click View Results to run the query. A window will pop up with our 2 parameters from before. As you can see, our default date value appears next to the second parameter, while our first parameter asking us for the statute category is empty, since we didn't choose a default value. So go ahead and click the 3 dots next to the field to open the Value Editor button or window. Now, as I said before, because of the action we chose, we can select 1 or more statute categories to include in our query. Let's go ahead and choose the driver's license and traffic sign and signal categories. Check the boxes next to driver's license and traffic sign and signal and click OK. Click OK again to run the query. You'll now be taken to the results screen. If you're following along in the handout, we are on step 33, and if you're using the May 2020 TRACS training version, you should have received 8 results, like I did here. As you can see, our query components are organized into columns with the field names set as the column headers. You can rearrange the columns by clicking on one and dragging it over to the desired spot. So let's go ahead and rearrange our columns to make the data more intuitive. We'll put document number first, then status, next document form disposition, violation date occurred, violation statute number, violation statute description, and last is the violation statute category. We can also rename the column headers by clicking Edit Captions down at the bottom. You'll see a drop-down list with the original column names in the top field. Go ahead and choose each one and rename it to something that makes more sense for our report. After changing the name, make sure you hit the Apply button. Don't hit the OK button until all column captions are changed. All right, so hitting OK there, you can see all our column captions have changed at the very top, and we choose Best Fit here so that we can see the entire data set that we have. So now looking through our data though, we can see that some of the data isn't readable. This is because TRACS stores certain data in a code value format, which is represented by a number like 7 for status or this T number for a statute. What we're looking for is the code text format of these values. So click the code text button at the bottom of the window and check all the boxes that appear. Click Update Texts to convert these values from their code value format into code text so that we can read them. Just above the column captions, there's an area that reads, drag a column here to group by that column. Column grouping can make our reports more organized and readable so that we can quickly find the data we're looking for. We'll group by statute category to separate our records by their categories. Click the statute category column caption and drag it into the grouping space, and you'll see the 2 groups replace the columns. You might need to expand the groups using the small arrow to the left of the group names. As you can see, we now have 2 groups based on the statute categories with their respective results from below them. Hitting Count field on the bottom of the window allows us to print a count of the number of rows contained within each group. So if we hit Count field and choose the statute category box and hit Update field, we'll see the number of rows under each group show up next to the group name. Now, this isn't too useful here, but in reports that generate hundreds of records, we can quickly get the number of records contained within each group at a glance using this feature. On the left here, you'll see the Choose Fields menu. Here you can add more fields to your report that you did not include in your original query. If we add fields from here, we're basically just doing the show in results action from before, so we can't use it to filter out or parameterize any fields, but it's useful to export more information if there is something you forgot to add to your query. Let's go ahead and add some location data to our results. So again, Choose Fields is organized by a form source type with the group below it and the field below that, just like the ad hoc query builder was. We expand ELSI, expand location, and check the box next to location literal description. Click the refresh button on the bottom to add this to our results. The column is added to there at the end with the field name preceded by the group. Go ahead and change this caption using the Edit Captions button again to make it look more like the other captions. One thing to keep in mind as well is that each time you add new data, Trax reruns the query, which might revert your code text values back to their code value formats. Again, the code text button is down below, and make sure all the boxes are checked to transform the data to a readable format. Finally, we're ready to wrap up our report by adding a report header and footer. Go ahead and give the report name across the top in the header text field, something like traffic violations by statute category. Jan 18 to DEC 19. At the bottom here, we're just going to put our agency name, so type in test. So click the print button to look at a print preview of your report. You'll see all the data along with our headers included. From here, you can print the report, export the report as a PDF, JPEG, or other file types, and you can also create an email with the report as a PDF attachment. If you want to play around with how the format of the report looks, you can click on the Report Layout tab, located just to the next, or just to the right of the Print Preview tab, rather. Clicking this tab will give us this pop-up we see here, telling us that using this feature creates a custom version of the report that can only be customized using the same editor. That's fine. This just means that any layout changes need to be made using the same feature in the future. So if you get this pop-up, go ahead and click yes. And now you may get another pop-up regarding custom bindings. Always click yes if you see this as well. Now this opens the report layout editor window, which is a bunch of tools that allow us to change the way our report looks. So if we wanted to add certain words to make them bold, or add colors, or add lines in between the rows, this is where we would do that kind of thing. We won't get too much into this now because this could be a whole training in itself, but just play around with the different tools available to you until you get a better feel for the report layout editor. And always feel free to contact the Badger Trax team with any questions. So let's go ahead and hit Regenerate Report on the very top there to go back to our original version. And this will take us back to the print preview screen. So click Finish on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen to finish our report. The last thing I want to mention is the map functionality that the Trax ad hoc reports have. So select your query again and click the map button. Using the same parameters as before, they should be auto-populated from last time. Go ahead and click OK. This will open a map view of our data with push pins for each record pulled. As you can see, we still have 8 records returned, and we can use the map to get a visual for where each of these incidents occurred. We'll just be using today the square magnifying glass tool, which is the last one down there, to zoom into the Madison area and see from there that 6 of our 8 results are in this area. This map can be printed off, exported, or emailed, just as you would for any other report by using the print button on top. And one really cool thing about the map feature is that if you right-click on any pin, you can get a quick overview of the record. but even better is that you can click Open Form to go directly to that TRACS entry form to verify data, quickly print off a record for, again, records requests, or anything you want to do with that citation. So with that, this brings our introduction to the TRACS ad hoc queries and ad hoc query builder to a close. There's a lot more that ad hoc queries can be used for that we did not cover in this introductory training, including multi-layer reports, advanced data filtering, multi-layer groupings in our queries, and much, much more. I really do hope you learned something today, and if you have any questions regarding ad hoc queries or anything else TRACS related, please feel free to access our repository of FAQs by navigating again to our website, www.wibadgertracs.gov, and clicking the FAQ tabs. As always, please do not hesitate to contact Badger TRACS at badgertracs@dot.wi.gov. That's Badger TRACS at dot.wi.gov with any other questions you may have.